Hi, my name is Sarah Winfrey, and I'm a family planning advisor with Coastal Funeral Center. We've invited a few of our community partners in to talk about trusts. This series is meant to answer a few frequently asked questions from our families about financial planning, wills, and trusts. Our topic today is, I'm a trustee, now what? We've invited Susan Graven from Riviera Fiduciary to speak today about fiduciaries and trusts. Thank you, Susan, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Absolutely. So tell me, what is a fiduciary? Can you tell me a little bit what you do?
That's a great question because not many people really understand even the word fiduciary. Most people relate it to just finances, but it really means that you're required to do what's in the best interest of your client. And in California and only a few other states, we are trained and licensed to be licensed professional fiduciary, which means by California state law, I have to do what's in the best interest for my client. And one of the roles is with trusts.
Wow, that's a huge responsibility. So tell me, I'm a trustee. What are the responsibilities?
Well, as you know, if you've had to take over an estate, one of the first things you want to do is secure the assets. You want to check on things like homeowners insurance, other kinds of insurance, and communication with potential beneficiaries is key. So reading the trust is part of it. A lot of people don't do that, but the whole idea is that you are to follow the instructions of the trust as the trustee.
And so I'm assuming I should probably start looking at that in advance. What are some of the things as a trustee do I need to think about in advance before someone has passed?
Well, I'm guessing kind of two parts of our audience here. We probably have some people that are planning their estate, in which case, before the trust is even written, if you have the opportunity to give input, you want to make sure from a professional perspective, there's three things that need to be in the trust. I need to make sure that I'm not liable for any previous trustees' actions. I want to make sure that there's an option for compensation, and that actually needs to be written in the trust. And the third and most important for the trustor, the person writing the trust, is that there is a way to have a successor trustee. If something happens and you can't do it or you don't want to do it, there needs to be an easy way to assign the next person or already have them assigned. But over the next 30 years of a trust's life, it's very difficult to know all the successors that might make sense. Reviewing your trust often is really key, critical element to all of this, and making sure that you have relevant, trustworthy successor trustees in place.
That's great. That's really wonderful information. So when a person is starting to do their trust, when should they invite their trustee to be along for the process? Or is this something that they let them know after the fact?
It's a difficult one because it probably will change over the years. So I've found you want to just get the estate planning process done and not worry too much about all those details. I think the more important part of the planning process is to make sure that you can do addendums to your trust and to your other estate planning documents easily, and then review it every 5 years. And then if you get to where, okay, now I'm really confident that this is the person I want to be my trustee, then have that conversation with them, share the trust with them as the trustor, and then as the trustee, knowing to read the trust and make sure you're comfortable with the language and what it's asking of you. There's a lot of online resources too for figuring it out, because it can be an overwhelming role.
Sounds like it. When you're looking to choose a trustee, what are some of the things that you think about? What are the choices that you make when you choose a trustee?
Probably somebody younger than you is a good idea. Amazing how often people think, oh, my sister's, a year younger than me, that'll be great. But when you're 85, and she's 84, that might not work well for her or him or whoever. But once again, reason that you want to look at it every 5 years or maybe even more often as you age to make sure that that's still a relevant choice. So younger, trustworthy, ethical, somebody that you feel will honor your wishes that you've laid out in the trust.
And as a trustee, do they get a copy of the trust, or is that something that is kept with the trust holder or the original people who've set up the trust?
Yeah. So the people who set up the trust are the trustor or the grantor. There's kind of three parties: the trustor, the trustee, and the beneficiaries. The trustor, it's really up to them. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of times where the trustee does not know that they're in the documents until maybe after the trustor passes. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly an attorney reaches out to them and says, hey, you're the trustee for so-and-so. And then you read it. You always have the option of saying, no, I can't do it. And that, once again, is why it's important to have pathway for being able to assign the next successor trustee.
So I'm assuming when that does happen and someone finds out that, oh, I'm a trustee now, do they get a set of instructions, or how do they navigate through that?
Hopefully is mostly written in the trust, but the trust is written by attorneys, and I have a lot of friends that are attorneys, but it's not always easy language. So you have to work through that legalese. Depending on the beneficiaries and your relationship to the trustor and the beneficiaries, you might want to have your own attorney look over that language for you and explain what is expected of you. And then there's a lot of good checklists. Reach out to me. I can give you some checklists for, what you need to do first and down the road as far as distributing the assets and all of that.
This is such great information. If you could impart one piece of information or advice to someone who just had this landing in their lap, what would you give them?
I think I give advice a lot to the trustors, and I'll say it for the 10th time, successor, successor, successor. But the other thing is people forget to fund their trust. And that means they'll think their house is in their trust because when they put together their trust document, they, on Schedule A, wrote down house and a bank account and whatever. But if you haven't actually changed the deed of the house to be in the name of the trust, then you have not funded the trust.
Oh, that's important.
So that's one of the biggest mistakes that you will find. And then you end up in probate court, which takes longer and costs more.
The biggest thing is not to end up in probate court, because I think that you said becomes a bigger issue for everyone involved.
Right. I like to try to reduce people's stress. If you end up in probate court, it's okay. You'll get through it. And in some ways, it's more rule bound, and you have a judge, a court telling you what to do when. It just does take longer and it's more expensive.
And as your role of fiduciary, when are you brought into with a family for a trust? When are you called in usually?
So far, all of my clients, almost all of my clients are still alive. Most people find out about a trustee from their attorney. So they'll go in when they're putting together their estate documents, and the attorney will say, you should have 3 levels of successor. If they're a good attorney, that's what they're saying. And the person will say, well, my kids are always fighting, or I don't have kids, or I don't want to burden my younger sister with this, or whatever their reasons are. Hopefully the attorney has heard of licensed professional fiduciaries and will recommend. And I always recommend, interview 3 people because it's a very personal decision, and then have a place in your estate documents where either that person, if you build up the trust with that fiduciary, or your attorney or somebody can easily assign the next level.
As you said, trusts set up and aren't even thought about or hopefully utilized until 10, 20, 30 years later.
Later, often. Although, living trusts that are put together by trustor can give instructions during their life as well, which I'm sure you've already talked with people about, the attorneys and with the CPAs, about how there's tax advantages to that while the trustor is still living as well. They can be beneficiary for that or for property management. Once the trustor, or maybe he has his wife or she has her husband as the successor trustee, they lose competency or anything like that, then the trust will define how that property management is to continue running businesses, all kinds of things that you can have in the trust. So to answer the other part of your question about the trustee side of it, I'm a trustee, what now? Like I said, there's great checklists and it can be overwhelming, but I would say securing the assets is key. Like I go in right away and change the locks on the house if that's relevant for the trust. Communicating with the beneficiaries about everything so they're not surprised that you're changing the locks, but explain that there's reasons for that if there's been caregivers, etc., that might have keys. The finances, you want to make sure that somebody's on top of paying the gardener and all of those kinds of things. That's a bit more on the power of attorney side of things, but as the trustee, you want to, investing is probably a bigger part of that. Prudent investing, making sure that all of their assets are being taken care of and are secure. But really administering the trust according to the trust's instructions. Taxes are a big part of it. You want to make sure you get the property and income tax returns in on a timely manner. But you don't have to do this all yourself. You can bring in experts, CPAs for the taxes, of course, financial experts for the investing. But just know that you do have to answer to the beneficiaries and show that you are protecting the assets.
If the beneficiary is also a trustee, does that make it easier or harder?
Are there other beneficiaries? So yes, it can be if you have the other beneficiaries feeling like you're not being fair. So yeah, I would stress communication is key element to this, and having the experts to back you up that no, you are being fiscally responsible.
Cover all your bases.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Susan. This is so helpful, especially for myself, and I'm sure for many of our viewers. When you're looking for a fiduciary, I know you'd mentioned that there is not that many in the state. What should we look at when reaching out to you or reaching out to others?
Yeah, there's really only about 1,000 active licensed professional fiduciaries in all of California, which wouldn't be enough for Los Angeles, or probably even just the South Bay, if more people knew about us. People tend to find out just when they go to their attorney and when they're told about us, or like in your instance where you suddenly found yourself as a trustee, and then it can be overwhelming trying to figure out what the next steps are. So there are some good resources online. Probably good to check with your attorney to make sure you have the right checklists, or to talk with other professionals. I have some resources on my website, for example, which is www.rivtrust.com. That's Riv Trust, like Riviera, RIV Trust.com. But there's a lot of other good resources out there.
Thank you again for joining us, and thank you all for watching. If you'd like to learn more about Coastal Funeral Center, feel free to give us a call at 310-326-6343 or at our website, coastalfuneralcenter.com. Thank you again.